take Rusty home. It's all for strep throat. And more news. I found the place on the tape with Mark South and the flagpole, where he said, "This is my flagpole and this is my house." Unfortunately, it isn't a tape of Mark saying it. It's a tape of my reporting it, verbatim. So I guess I will stop looking. I guess that's it. It's not good enough. But the big news is the work is up to date and we have free time. Free time. And God brought us through it all. Remember the night, last Monday in July, we came over this road at 9:30, pitch black. We had to take this road because the moving truck couldn't go up to Taconic. It's a perfect day. Thank you, God. 13 p.m. Free time. Free time. Victory. Victory over all of that work. Every bit is done. 8:02 a.m. Columbus Day. October 12, 2001. Anno Domini. Leaving to try to find a New York Times for Franklin. Rusty's in the car. Up at 5 a.m. All the chores. Cats and the dogs. And there's Penny. Penny, you should be inside. Let me go to the deli and see if I can get a New York Times for Franklin. Franklin's breakfast and lunch are on his desk. He's watching Today Show for ball scores. I think it's awful. They don't give sports. He wants to know what the scores were last night. And all that hard work in July, calling 400, and in June, calling 400 ads for rentals. And all that hard work moving up to Patty's. And then she double-crossed us. We had to move again. All that hard work packing and settling. Finding a mover. Moving twice. Going through those crooks, Adam movers. 3 times actually. Adam's movers, Westchester's movers, because Adam ran away with our furniture. And Westchester movers the second time. $2,000. And South ran away with their security deposit, $1,200 plus interest. And he's going to court. I'm taking him to court again next Thursday, October 18th. This is where Michael Cross lives. Right there. And all that hard work loading up the truck. All that hard work for weeks, settling, stacking museum boxes, putting the clothes in order, settling the furniture on the porch, putting the rugs down. It all paid off, folks, on October the 11th, Thursday, 4:30 p.m. Free time. Work up to date. And never stop until it's done. Today he should be getting an idiot sheet, the sporting news, so he can keep up with the baseball scores. What does he do all winter? Hibernate. The long, cold, dark winter. He never moves a muscle until spring when the first baseball game starts. Yes, there may not be 6 half-hour programs every week at Chat with Glendora, because there isn't that much to report to you. That would make it lighter too. That's good. It's a victory. Long sought for a decade. Picked up Penny and got her into the house. Franklin's all set. Katie. do about that? It closed the mailroom. So what are we going to do about that? More and more problems in public access. Well, the first thing you do when you get bad news all day long is to tell jokes. Peter said a husband is like a bottle of wine. He gets better with age. And his wife said, if I'd known that, I would have kept him in the cellar. And Charlene was married to a banker, an actor, a minister, and an undertaker. That's 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready, and 4 to go. Alice and Arthur couldn't afford to go to Niagara Falls for their honeymoon, so instead they went to the car wash. And Anthony says that he's been happily married for 9 years and that 35 miles. And today's praying. 1/3 down. Taxi cabs. TV, it seems that they could put out a better signal than that. Seems their signal should go farther than that.
And there was no such thing as HMO deductibles, and they didn't have to worry about buying the latest computers. But this was life today. So what's a family to do? One solution?
Express lane heavy into exit 64 in Hackensack. Southbound Garden State Parkway, very heavy for a mile into the Union tolls. One of the toll booths is out of service due to mechanical problems, so only 3 are in service. Also eastbound Route 3, heavy from the Garden State to the Meadowland. 2-car accident just over the Hackensack River Bridge is the problem there. Inbound George Washington Bridge down to just about 10 minutes now on both decks. Not really a bad trip at all. Inbound Lincoln still about 30 minutes. And as far as Long Island is concerned, we are still very slow on the southern state both ways by the Meadowbrook. 2 separate accidents being worked on there. Westbound Sunrise Highway sluggish from Hospital Road and again at Connecticut Avenue in Suffolk County. Also the northbound Seaford Oyster Bay Expressway slow approaching the Northern State Parkway. Now here's meteorologist Craig Allen in the WCBS Weather Center.
The day may start foggy in parts of the region, otherwise it will be a mostly sunny afternoon, high 70 to 75. Tonight, clear skies, then some late night and early morning fog once again, lows in the mid-50s to around 60.
Wide public access. There's Paul Finer's office right over there. This is Greenberg. And the stats, 9:17 a.m., exactly 1 hour. 46 miles, Elmsford. Go to Staples and get duct tape. Okay, to the Kmart Plaza. It used to be the Calder's Plaza. To get Glendora. And a bar of soap. Errand number 2. October 12th, Columbus Day. 20 minutes to 10. Lost them all. We lost Calder's. We lost Rodney's video. We lost Rock Bottom. We lost Bradley's. Oh, it's all so sad. All those nice stores. What's the matter, Rusty? You're welcome. Yeah. Let's go here. Sort of peculiar arrangement. Excuse me, it's nothing to sneeze at. Errand number 3. White Plains Public Access. Leaving Greenberg. I should have brought a loaf of bread for the seagulls. 5 cents. Used to be 5 cents a package of gum. A penny a stick. White Plains Railroad Station. We went through a red light right in front of a White Plains policeman. This is a fire drill. And Penny's. Penny's is empty. Galleria, Penny's is empty. Oh, this hurts. White Plains Public Access. Cowie lives up there. James Cowie, retired. Judge, Westchester County, Supreme Court, so-called. Third errand of the day is done. White Plains Public Access. Number 4 is White Plains Post Office. There's Rick's. I don't go there anymore. Oh, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 spent at Rick's. Rip-off. Get you a parking place in the shade, Rusty. Yeah. This is Rusty's favorite walking path. He loves it so much he even does 2 BMs. Folks, I've seen it worse, but this is the in-mail for today. Where is that one from? Wayne Scott, New York. These are the photographs for church. This is the in-mail. There's about 15 in-mail. These are from Bennett, Nassau County. This is from BCAT. Those 2 are from BCAT. This is to find out how much 4 3/4-inch tapes weigh to mail. This is from Santa Fe. These are to be delivered to New Rochelle. And that's Rusty's box. Now we're going to take Rusty for his favorite walk. The White Plains Post Office is his favorite walk. Dump de Blase. Westchester County Courthouse. Perfect weather. 19 floors of injustice plus these over here. They've rented. New parking meters, folks. Look at that. Brand shiny new. I hate them. All the way up. 6 new parking spaces. They didn't have them last week. Nice little park. Belongs to the county. Prisoners. Crooked judge, get rid of him. He doesn't know the law. And he's a bad American. White Plains Library. is the so-called low-rise building. This is where Andrew Spano, county clerk, used to be, in that corner office. Now he's the county executive. That's the old White Plains post office. Nice looking building. And then the stupid Attorney General state of New York was using it. And they moved down to the old federal courthouse, go straight down the street. Comments I didn't get on TV. One man says, "Who is this guy?" And I said, "He's a liar, a thief, and a cheat, and a judge." He says, "Well, he's a politician." And I said, "He should be in jail and he should be fined." Then this man along here somewhere said, "Freedom of speech is a great thing, isn't it, ma'am?"
Don't video me, please. Don't video me, please. Hello? Excuse me. Oh, say, run, 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 run. Why are you videoing that house? Where you doing that house? I'll find out what they whatever. Come to know what she's not there, myself, that video.
Why have we done it?
So you got any cats? Oh, I see a tail hanging out the car. No, but that was a dog. I thought it was a cat tail. All right, it's okay, puppy. What's all those bumps all over? Someone who films, that's not nice. That's rude. For you to film me and not talk. Is that nice? I thought you wanted to talk, so I figured I'd come over and say hello. You don't want to talk? Have a nice day.
Crazy people. Crazy people, these foreigners. That was interesting, though. Plenty of activity. It was Alfredo. He said he didn't live there anymore. He left a pile of leaves here. He does that house over there. And then this crazy woman and this man. And these two. Okay. Big mouth. Big mouth. Needs medicine on controlling impulses. We now head for the next to the last errand. Harrison TV. Time 1:40p. Mileage 65. Coming into Harrison. This is Harrison and Rye, and that's Lily and Vernon. And down here is Gabelli. Big Belly, who owns a lot of Big Belly Cablevision stock. stock market is not well today.
CBS New York at Infinity Broadcasting Station.
It's 74 degrees, sunny at 2 o'clock.
CBS News, I'm Bill Whitney. At a time when so many Americans are displaying the flag, President Bush leads the nation in a salute. It's going on simultaneously at schools across the nation. We begin our live coverage with CBS News correspondent David Dow at a high school in Los Angeles.
Powder, which was antibody subsequently forwarded on to federal officers.
The New York Times also received an envelope with
Bob
white
Wright,
powder. It's being tested.
the
and
CEO of
the second such
NBC.
envelope to arrive
Remember,
at the
he was
State
on a
Department
chat
in
with
Washington
Glendora?
is being tested as well. The criminal investigation.
Remember that, folks? Bob Wright was on a chat with Glendora. And that's why David Letterman had a Glendora on his program. So much of the TV and radio news is all scare tactics. It's a deliberate building of audience by getting people scared. It was AIDS, now it's anthrax. Cablevision Harrison. I guess Patrick was overruled. Patrick Dolan was overruled on no flags. And this is nice. We used to have flowers here 10 years ago. Nobody answers the door. Two 10 p.m. Nobody answers the door. So let's go put them through this mail slot. That means they can't pick up any. No pets allowed. Rinky dink. Rinky dink. Rinky dink. What time is it? 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And nobody answers the door. folks, I have a document here that shows you how crooked, again, is the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. And this is written to Orrin Hatch. And it says to Orrin here is more fugitivism. They are afraid to have the truth in the record. This is the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. We gave up rallying against the Second Circus today, October the 12th, 2001, Friday. We postponed it, but we have caught them cheating and lying and betraying the United States of America, and we will go back. The idiots do not even give a docket number, U.S. Court of Appeals docket numbers. Now this is shoddy. This is stupid. Glendora did not even receive this dumb spit out until October 12th. The Second Circus is so bad. They don't even enclose a T-1080 form. We have caught them and they know that we know. And you produce, they say that I have to have leave to appeal, that there was an order, but there's never been an order signed by 3 judges. And I tell them, you just produce the document that says that I have to have leave of appeal. They cannot steal my right to appeal. And you, the Second Circuit, are committing fraud against the United States of America, and you do this only a few blocks from where 4,500 people were murdered. And here is the letter that we received on October 12th. And that's the day that they wanted the motion for leave to appeal. They did the same old wheeze back in May. Same kind of an envelope. I will show you that. So I found a motion form, a T-1080 form, and I made my motion and filled out the form. And they don't even give it a docket number in the United States Court of Appeals. That's how bad they are. This is appealing the crooked order of Rena Raji. There's nothing but crooked judges in the Eastern District of New York. It says previous request, none. And it says you are illegally robbing Glendora of her right to appeal. The Rena Raji error and abuse. You have no statutory authority to do so. You have no grounds. You have no order signed by 3 judges. You cheat in plain Anglo-Saxon terms. You go to criminal lengths to cover up the bad record of bad judges. 18 U.S. Code 2701. You tamper with the record. You violate federal rules of civil procedure 77, 78, 79, and you violate federal rules of appellate procedure. You betray America. Here you are next to the cavern of the World Trade Center. You know the mail is slower. You send out a letter on the 15th. It gets here on the 12th, and you demand, you send it out on the 5th. It gets here on the 12th, and you demand an answer by the 12th. Your anxiety to cheat has made you lose your marbles. Under penalty of perjury, Glendora tells you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. She always has. You do not. And I'll see you in the spring when we picket this whole gang of cheaters. Now that's one offense by them. Another offense is they send out an order signed by a clerk who has no authority at all. The orders, before an order is an order, it has to be signed by a judge. Well, they send out these things signed by Lucille Carr. That's all she does all day long is sign her name. And she has no authority to do so, and I said so. And the chief judge of the Second Circuit, John Walker, he is a bad Bush. He's related to the Bush family. And this is on the judicial misconduct complaint upon Michael B. McCasey, another crackpot on the bench in the United States District Court, Southern District of New York. And so I sent this all to Orrin Hatch, and Orrin Hatch, the Center for Judicial Accountability, Erwin Rommel School of Law, that's Michael Brown, A Matter of Justice, Meekum, who's the Administrator of U.S. Courts, he's terrible. Orrin Hatch, Senate Judiciary Committee, House Judiciary Committee, and Senator Jeffords, And of course you have to send 5 copies to the useless United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. Here is a telephone call from Barbara Gelman.
Yeah. Hi, Glendora. It's over here at Cablevision. I'm calling you because they put a blanket restriction on us opening any mail at all. This includes tapes all over Cablevision. I'm warning you, at least in the Austin, I should say not all over Cablevision, in the Peekskill Austin area that I know of. It may be in other areas. I just received a tape from you. I cannot touch it. I could stare at it from long distance, and I knew it was from you. I do have a tape to play this Saturday. I'm fine there, but I don't have a tape beyond that. So you want to call me back or just stop by and leave a tape? I don't know exactly what to tell you to do at this point. I'm calling all the people that I can think of that mail me in tapes. And I can mail back to you still, but I can't open anything at this point. As soon as it passes, I'll let everybody know. Okay, you take care. And yes, thank you for a nice day today. We all need it. Thanks. Bye-bye.
So folks, what are we going to do about that? It closed the mailroom. So what are we going to do about that? More and more problems in public access. Well, the first thing you do when you get bad news all day long is to tell jokes. Peter said a husband is like a bottle of wine. He gets better with age. And his wife said, if I'd known that, I would have kept him in the cellar. And Charlene was married to a banker, an actor, a minister, and an undertaker. That's 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready, and 4 to go. Alice and Arthur couldn't afford to go to Niagara Falls for their honeymoon, so instead they went to the car wash. And Anthony says that he's been happily married for 9 years and that 9 out of 50 isn't bad. And Neil said to his wife, honey, you look the same as you did the day we were married. And she said, why wouldn't I? I'm wearing the same dress. October 9th. Franklin is so much better. Takes about 40 minutes to get him up and to wash and dress, to sit at his desk, to give him breakfast. Now I called Diane Bennett. I didn't want to talk to him because not one person, not one of my friends so-called at Cablevision has stood behind me. I just carried out the Bin Ladens by rote. No loyalty and no humanity. I didn't feel like calling Diane Bennett, but I'd rather be a human being than work for Cablevision. And so I did. She wanted to be kept posted, so I told her that I would not be at Lynbrook because she was planning to be there at Lynbrook to support Patrick when Glendora came. So I told her I would not be bombing Lynbrook. I really didn't want to be decent, but I have to be. Went to the store and got Franklin the New York Times. The deli charges $1 for it. It's a ripoff, and they won't correct it. A&P charges $75, and the Stop and Shop charges $75. But they got to be greedy. So I think you're up to date. Rusty's very happy. And he's a good dog. He's just as quiet as can be, and he loves his bed. You miss going to Lynbrook, Rusty? You miss going down on Sunrise Highway along the railroad tracks, making all your stops? Well, Rusty, we'll give you something else. It's about 10:30. Maybe we should go west on Route 84 and down south on Route 9. See if you can find a duplicator at Walmart. This is a new road to us, Rusty. It's 84 west beyond the Taconic. Let's get down here 4 miles. We've been on the road 10 miles, and it's 10:25 a. Right across the street there. We gotta find duplicators. Walmart. I've never been to a Walmart before. Have you, Rusty? We found it. Glendora can. And there's the door. Isn't this exciting? So many cars. Good. Money is being spent. Wow. Is that editing at Cablevision? No, it isn't. But we shall overcome. It's a great store, folks. The VCRs were like $70 a piece, so we got 4 of them. We got a vacuum cleaner for $95, a GE. We got Pond's cold cream. That's too much, over like $8. We got rabbit food. We got a case of food for Rusty. What else did we get, Rusty? You know that we got you a present, Rusty? Oh, it's a great store. And this is all rubbish that you will have to throw out. The rubbish is all gone. And there's all the money spent because of Bin Laden at Cablevision. Now we'll go to the post office. Fishkill. Well, I think it's a great store. And I can't compare prices because I didn't buy these things before. But, except for the microcassette, I believe 6 microcassettes, 90 minutes each, were only $6.28 at Walmart and $9 and something at Kmart. Look at those 2 big rocks. Go through this light. Then take Route 52. Oh, it's the post office. Insurance.
Sir, where's the post office? Post office? Post office.
Hey folks, we've been to the post office and we mailed Walker, Crooked Walker, who has no statutory authority to let a clerk slough off my misconduct, judicial misconduct complaint against McCasey, that crackpot on the United States District Court, Southern District. and we mailed the leave to appeal, and we mailed all the other first class, several donations. We did we mailed the tapes to Bennett, and we mailed the forms to Bennett, both for today and for last week. Thursday they said it should be there. There's no problem at the post office, no inspection of packages, no asking for ID. Everything was normal. Now we'll go to Radio Shack. It's 10 minutes to 1. We didn't have to go to Westchester. We're doing all this in mid-Hudson Valley at Fishkill. Now we're going to the Radio Shack to buy a microphone. We need a new mic. I heard that ShopRite has the best prices of anybody. So I got a flyer. We didn't have to go to Westchester. We have to go Thursday to the Rice City Court and get that $1,200 back from that crooked land. I tried, I took 104 East. I could have taken 93 East, and I came out onto 396. And 396 goes right into Hopewell. Fishkill Plains. Look at this. Now isn't that an interesting building? Glendora camp. Well, is this better than editing at Lynbrook, Rusty? Is it better than editing at Lynbrook? And 376 is supposed to go right into Hopewell. If I get to Hopewell, I can find my way to Bigman. What time is it? Well, it was sort of fun. It's 2 o'clock. We'd be just leaving Lynbrook now. Okay, so we gotta go home. And we gotta hook up our 4 VCRs. String them one to the other. And see if we can make 4 dubs simultaneously. Maybe we should have bought 5 VCRs. Maybe we'll have to bring in Desk 4 off of the porch. Well, we could stack them one on top of the other though, couldn't we? What do you say, Rusty? So here we are, Hopewell Junction. Route 82. Here we are at Rusty Field. This is Rusty Field. So we'll turn off the motor, we'll open the door, and then we'll back our way and let Rusty have his field. You want some help coming out, Rusty dog? Okay. There he goes. And he's a free dog. He's a free dog. And this is his field. Rusty Field. I don't know if we did such a smart thing. 1:30 to 2:15. 3/4 an hour coming home. That way. Well, it was interesting. And overnight. Well, here they are, folks, the 4 VCRs. And I hooked them up in series. I've done nothing but this since 7 a.m. this morning. And it's about 2 p.m. now, so that's 7 hours on account of the Bin Laden of Cablevision. And the first edition, though, is done this way, and it has been videotaped, the first edition, edited, and it has been wrapped. And there's the bag of tapes down there. And the second edition is videotaped, edited, and wrapped. And this is the end of the third edition. But it all worked out. It's really a wonderful universe, the way these things can work themselves out. The day is Wednesday, 2001, October 17. Tomorrow, October 18th, is the trial in the Rye City Court against cheater landlord and thief landlord Godfrey South for running away with $1,200 security deposit and the interest. This is the original VCR, the Magnavox, and the other four are the new ones, the Emersons. And here are the boxes that they came in. And there's the new GE vacuum cleaner. So set the world, take away the tilt. Peter said a husband is like a bottle of wine. He gets better with age. His wife said if I'd known that, I would have put him in the cellar. And Charlene's been married to a banker, an actor, a minister, and an undertaker. That's 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready, and 4 to go. And Alice and Arthur couldn't afford to go to Niagara Falls when they got married, so they went to the car wash. Anthony says he's been married happily for 9 years, and that's not bad out of 50. Neil said to his wife, "Honey, you look the same as you did when I married you 18 years ago." And she said, "Why wouldn't I? I'm wearing the same dress."
Two, three, four. Okay, what is it, 10%? All right. Now, when I say you were shafted, do I mean personally or he just didn't do his job? Let's eliminate a state rep who didn't do his job, because that's most of them. Now let me see a show of hands where a state rep went out of his way to shaft you. Let's see a show of hands. 1, 2, 3. Okay, all right, I'll make my point here. Now, because Edward I's judges did not understand this statute, he did not understand that when people get fed up enough with a legal system, that particular government is normally overthrown by fed-up citizens or foreign armies. So by 1289, apparently, Edward's judges hadn't got the word, and he removed all the judges in England from the bench for corruption except for 2. He kept 2 of them, started all over again. Now, let's go to 1340. This is about where we are now. The judges in England in 1340 had become so enamored of their own court procedure, and a lot of you will notice, and we'll get to this here in a minute, the fact that these people don't address the issues raised, that these judges had become so enamored with their own procedure, they were forgetting that they were there to make sure that they resolved disputes between parties. That's what a court system is for. In other words, if you have a civil case, instead of the peasants killing each other over water rights or something like that, you're supposed to go to court. Judge is supposed to sort it out, put it in front of a jury. There's supposed to be a decision, and then everybody goes their way. Well, it didn't happen like that. So by the year 1340, and like I said, we're just about this far away from this right now, the English Parliament appointed commissioners. And the commissioners went in, and they literally just knocked the judges off the bench and said, okay, let's straighten this mess out. Now, another one here. Let's go to 1381. Any of you familiar with Wat Tyler's rebellion? Okay, Wat Tyler was a roofer, and a tax collector came in, and they had a kind of a weird tax there, is that when your daughter became of marriageable age, that you had to pay more tax. Well, a tax collector was there, and he told Wat Tyler's wife, okay, I want to make sure if this girl's old enough, have her take off all her clothes. And Wat Tyler got a little offended at that and killed the guy with a hammer. So what happened next is since the English legal system had already degenerated to the point that ours has now, is that literally 100,000 men rose up. I mean, these guys fought in military formation. And they stormed London, literally ran everybody out of it. They literally took over England for a brief period of time. And the thing I'm sure that some of you fellows will appreciate is that these guys, they thought as one, they moved as one, they fought as one, they were highly disciplined, they even hanged some of their own for looting. But the one thing Wat Tyler could not control is every time his men caught a lawyer or a judge, they ripped him apart on the spot. Now, let's go up to 1489. Okay, Henry VII. About every 200 years, you're going to find in the English-speaking world, the judiciary becomes so corrupt they just have to be removed wholesale. That's what Henry VII did in 1489. But then he made the mistake of getting two fellows named Empson and Dudley and decided he was going to streamline the legal system. He's going to do away with grand juries, he's going to do away with trial juries. He was just going to let administrators handle it. Well, really did great for the king's treasury, but a lot of people got treated unfairly. They got robbed, they got plundered, and that sort of thing. And so when Henry VIII took the throne on April the 22nd, 1509, and he knew the people were about ready to revolt based on the behavior of Empson and Dudley and their minions, while he was on his way to his coronation, he had those two executed. They were both put to death. Now let's go up to 1603. Remember what I said about the common law? Now this gets a little tricky. And this is something you need to understand, because when you get into a case where you're arguing the common law, and it works like this. If you have a case in which there aren't any precedents either way, in other words, nobody can tell, not the judge, not the lawyers involved, not the litigant, nobody can tell what legal principle is supposed to control on a particular case. Then you have recourse to the common law. Now in the federal courts, the common law ended in 1789. But in the state of Missouri, the common law ended in 1607, the fourth year of the reign of James III. In other words, if you're going to use a common law principle, it has to come from prior to 1607 in a Missouri court. And if you do that, you're going to find quite often, well, we're going to get to showing you how to get these people's attention. But I'll give you, well, I'm trying to think of it. Can't think of an example offhand. I'll have to come back to that later. Let's see here. Okay. Let's go with a little more history here. I know some of you probably fallen asleep on this, but trust me on this, you're going to need it later, because at some point you're going to run across something and say, wait a minute, this can possibly be solved by the common law. And if you want to know what the common law was in 1589 or whatever, there's an organization in England called the Selden Society. It costs $50 a year to join. I'm a member. And they republish all the old English reports. And if you think that it's difficult right now using the legal system, think if you had been in England and you spoke English before 1500, because from 1066 to 1500, because of the Normans, all legal proceedings were done in French. You didn't speak French, you could forget it. 1628, England had what they call the Petition of Right. All right, that's very much like our Bill of Rights. From 1642 to 1649, they had a civil war. Now, the reason they had a civil war was because when James I came to the throne in 1603, he really didn't care. He was kind of a playboy. And so he appointed, because he was a weak king, the Stuarts were all basically weak, they appointed judges who were absolute inhuman monsters. And by 1642, the English people had had enough. They rebelled, and Charles I, who was the king at that time, James died in 1626, everybody was so fed up with him, the Parliament beheaded him. 1671, and I'm sure you can relate to this, they passed gun laws. But the gun laws did not affect the aristocracy. If you had a big enough estate where you could go hunting on it, you could keep your firearms. Everybody else had to get rid of them. Now, oh, here's one of my favorites. Okay? Teaching you how to think. How many of you know when the first American War for Independence was fought? Let's see a show of hands. Okay. One. What year? What year was it fought? No, you're close though. Okay, at least we have an effort here. It's called Bacon's Rebellion. Nathaniel Bacon came over from England in 1675. And Nathaniel Bacon lived in what was then known as Virginia. Now bear in mind, Virginia at the time was a huge area. It wasn't just Virginia, it was Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, parts of Illinois, parts of North Carolina. It was literally a continent. And Nathaniel Bacon, this would make a good Mel Gibson movie, by the way. Anybody here knows Mel Gibson? Nathaniel Bacon got there, and apparently he'd had some kind of military experience, if you read the British Admiralty accounts. And they had a governor there named Berkeley, typical self-centered swine, typical politician. Berkeley had a very lucrative fur trading business with the Indians, but the Indians couldn't understand why all these people that came over from England had to have all this empty space, like 300,000 acres here and there and that sort of thing that had been granted to them by the Stuart kings. Well, so what the Indians were doing to retaliate, they were killing the white settlers. And of course the white settlers just really didn't enjoy this, so they wanted to mount an expedition to stop the Indians from killing them on a regular basis. So they had a party one Saturday afternoon, and 200 of them elected Nathaniel Bacon as their leader. So Nathaniel Bacon went to the governor, Berkeley, said, look, we've got to have these Indians, they got to quit killing all these people, so let's, give me a commission here. And Berkeley said, well, okay. As soon as Bacon's out of sight, Berkeley revokes his commission, calls him a rebel and a traitor, puts out an arrest warrant for him. So Bacon turned around on him, all right? Bacon literally beat the British Empire in 1676. Bacon died of the bloody flux before this revolution could run its course. Because if Nathaniel Bacon had lived, I want you to consider something here, gentlemen. Nathaniel Bacon's army consisted in a large part of white indentured servants and black slaves. And a really kind of sad part of this is, because I know a lot of you are familiar with our mistreatment of people in this society, is of the last 100 men to lay down their arms in Bacon's rebellion, and it happened like this. These fellows, they had gone into the interior, they were trying to get across the river, and a British warship sailed up the river and said, okay, we'll give you safe passage across this river. So these guys, all 100 of them, said, okay. So they got in their boats, they're halfway across the river, and the British admiral double-crossed them, said, okay, now if you don't surrender immediately, I'm going to sink all your boats with cannon fire. Well, they're 200 or 300 yards away from guns that had a range of 1,500 yards. So they said, okay, we quit. And here's the really ridiculous part of this, gentlemen. Of the last 100 men to lay down their arms in Bacon's rebellion, 80 of them were black. And if Nathaniel Bacon had won, there would have been no slavery in this country. Now, let me give you some more history here. Try to teach you how to think. In fact, I think I missed something here. Yeah, I did. I want to teach you about the Battle of Culloden. Now, a lot of you think that, okay, my case is hopeless. All right? Well, no case is hopeless. It's just that you're just not good enough yet. Now, at Culloden, here's what happened. Year before in Preston Pans, 1745, the British, using rifles and bayonets, ran into the Scots, who were mostly big hairy dudes, all right? Average British infantryman was like 5'9", weighed about 150. Average Scotsman was over 6 foot and 200. And what the Scots had done, very effective technique when somebody is using muskets, is when the British soldiers would have their bayonets like this, a Scot with a shield would simply sweep the weapon aside and take the guy's head off with a claymore, big Scottish sword. And at Preston Pans, the British Army was slaughtered with this. Some of you may remember the movie Zulu. At Isla Wahanda, the Zulus used the same tactic. They killed 1,700 British soldiers using exactly the same method. But at Culloden, and this is why I want you to relate this to legal problems, at Culloden, a British general said, this isn't going to work again because we're going to get clobbered, so here's what we're going to do. From now on, and this is under pain of court-martial, and back then court-martial meant hanging, You are not allowed to aim your bayonet at the guy in front of you. You have to go 45 degrees to the right. Cover the man to your right. And they adopted that tactic because what would happen is when the Scots came in like this, bayonet came in this way. When the battle was over, 50 English soldiers had died, or 800 Scots dead on the field. And the principle to be learned on legal work is this. Remember what I keep telling you about? You think as one, you move as one, you vote as one, you fight as one. If you don't think you can win your case, pick somebody whose case you can win and fight that one. And you'll find eventually, when you've won enough of them and you've learned enough, you look back at it and say, you know what? Mine isn't all that bad. I can probably get out of here if I put in the proper paperwork. First case I ever fought. A guy came to me in the law library. This was back in the mid-70s. And it's in the book. Is one of you fellows got my lawsuit cookbook here? Okay. You got one? You want to bring it up here for a second? Okay. I wrote this book based on 6 years of experience, and the reason I wanted him to bring it up is I'm the guy in the yellow shirt. Okay? Here, you can have your book back. Thanks. Anyway, this guy came to me in the law library, and he said, would you help me? You know how to do this stuff. I said, I've never done one. And he says, well, you know, would you help me anyway? Because you look like you know what you're doing. Because I had learned the indexing system. I said, tell you what. I said, the problem I've got here is I don't want to hurt you. He says, Brown, he says, I got a 20-year bit. I've been down 7 years. I got no money. Nobody's going to help me. He says, you can't hurt me. I said, wait a minute. What you're telling me is if I take your case and I fight it to a finish, then win, lose, or draw, I haven't done you any damage. He said, that's correct. I said, you know what? Your case is easier than my case. Let me start with this one. I not only won it, I won it in the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals in Chicago. It took me 13 months to get him out. That was over 25 years ago. In fact, the case is mentioned here. Now, let's continue. So, if you don't think you can win your own case, cover the man to your right. Now, here's another thing, a couple of things I want to cover. Our Bill of Rights was enacted in 1791. And the date's important because just before that, 2 years before, they had the French Revolution, 1789. Now, here's another principle to think about. What's precipitated the French Revolution, I mean, the French people have been oppressed for half a century. They weren't any more oppressed in 1789 than they were in 1739. Right? But here's the mistake the king made, and this is it. In most European countries, when they have a parliament, they'll have two houses of parliament. They'll have one called the House of Lords, and the other the House of Commons. Or they have one for the aristocracy and one for the peasants. Or as I like to say it, we the peasants. Now, the mistake Louis XVI made was this. He and his predecessor had literally squandered all the wealth of France. People were starving. You've probably heard the famous expression when Marie Antoinette was told the people have no bread. And she says, well, let them eat cake. In other words, totally unconcerned about all the misery these morons had created because they didn't know what they were doing. So Louis got the bright idea that, you know what? I've got all these advisors, all these people from the House of Lords, and they don't know what they're doing, so I'm going to bring people in from the different towns, and maybe somebody with some common sense will show us how to straighten this mess out. So he convened, which had not been convened for half a century, what is called the Estates General. And the Estates General was the equivalent of we the peasants, the House of Commons, whatever you want to call us. And when he did not like what he heard. I mean, these people basically just railed against him. He had called people in from all areas of France. And what precipitated the French Revolution was the fact that he'd put all these people together that all had a common gripe. And when they got together and had a common gripe, there was no way of separating them, and that's where the French Revolution started from. And the end result was 500,000 people died because of that. Well, can anybody here relate this to a prison system? In other words, all of you people here, all right, they've made the mistake of putting you all together, and now there's too many of you, and I don't think they quite know what to do with you. Now, let's go to a couple other things I want to cover. One of my pet peeves, Roe versus Wade. And the reason I want to cover it is this. I want you to think about something. A lot of you had people on juries, and did you notice that they didn't care. They were just in a hurry to get home to supper. Did you notice that? Okay, man's shaking his head in agreement back there. All right. Now I want you to think about something. You've got 12 people on a jury. You got 6 of them are women. Statistically, 2 of them killed their own children. What makes you think they're going to show you any mercy? All right? We have degenerated so far that we're really close to what the Carthaginian Empire went through, and it's this. The ultimate weapon is man. All right? Better than thermonuclear devices. You don't have people, you don't have a military, you don't have a country, you don't have anything. Okay? And the Carthaginian Empire, from the year 800 to the year 200 AD, they were real big on infant sacrifice. In other words, sometimes 500 at a time. Well, when Hannibal, the greatest general who ever lived, after 600 years of this nonsense, came up against the Romans, he beat the Romans in every single battle, but the Romans won. Because the Romans just kept levying fresh troops, and Hannibal ran out of men. Well, it's the same thing here. Now, let's, okay, now, we're going to get into the specifics here. I want everybody to hold up his weapon. Very good. This is the brightest class I've ever had. Okay. This is it, gentlemen. This is your weapon. The pen is mightier than the sword, though, you know, thermonuclear device kind of beats them both. Okay. You've got your notebook. Now, I'm going to teach you another little trick here. You see these cards? All right. Can you get them in here? Excellent. Okay. You can get them in here. Let me tell you how to do what I call rack surfing. If you have a particular type of case that you're dealing with, what you do is every time the reporters come out, I don't care whether the Southwest Seconds, I don't care whether they're the federal reporters, but you just go through there and you go in the head notes in the front, the paperback copy, you just go down through there and you write down the principle. Not who won or lost, the principle. I'm going to reiterate that in a minute. And the other thing is, once you've learned the indexing system, there's one other thing you need to learn. That's the language. You find that in Black's Law Dictionary. If you see a legal term you don't understand, look it up in Black's Law Dictionary. Now, when you read a case, and this is a mistake I've seen people make for 27 years, you read it closely. In other words, if you think there's a case that's similar to yours, read it very, very closely. Because I can show you how to retaliate on a case in which you're entitled to some error, but if you can't read, or you can't comprehend, or you don't want to, which is mostly the case, and I saw this a lot when I was in Terre Haute 25 years ago, somebody would get a case and say, oh, look, this is me, and they'd pick out this one paragraph here, not bothering to read the rest of it to see that they were saying this is why this is wrong. You read it close, and you read it often. In other words, you'll find that each time you pick up a court case, if you read it and you think it applies to you, go back and read it again, and then go back and read it again. So pretty soon, and you'll find the 3rd time, the 4th time, the 5th time, you'll actually pick things out of that case you didn't get the first time. Now, when you read a case, you never ever read a case for who won or lost. You read it for the principles involved. And a lot of times you're going to find the principles are much more clearly explained in a case somebody lost than in the case they won, because you'll notice we don't get clean wins in these court systems anymore. In other words, these people, they do anything they can to play cat in the sandbox to make sure you stay right here. Because let's face it, gentlemen, this is a business. 85% of you are not here because you're a menace to society. You're here because somebody's making money on it. Now, let's get into reading the law. This is the indexing system. The first thing you have is a Constitution, okay? But you have a problem here, because at the federal level, there are 2 constitutions. And by 2 constitutions, I mean there was one that was written by the people who wrote it, and there's another one that's been rewritten by these crooked judges, these principalities and powers of darkness. If you go back, for example, we all know that the right of the people to keep and bear arms is very simple. It says what it means what it says, and everything before that is what you call a subordinate or dependent clause. There's nobody outside of 5th grade that doesn't understand that except the judges. And here's the way they did it. I'm just going to use this as an example so you'll see how these things happen. 1791, they gave us a Second Amendment. We're all supposed to be allowed to own weapons, all right? Unless you, of course, you have a felony conviction, then the feds take it away from you. And here's how they did it. In 1905, in a Kansas case, and you're going to see this in the books that will be passed out here before you leave, called Salina versus Blakesley. It was a little nothing case on a CCW, concealed weapons beef. And these idiots in the Kansas Supreme Court decided that, well, this was not an individual right, this was a collective right. In other words, this right only belonged to the highway patrol, the state militias, the police, and like that. It did not belong to individuals. Well, you know, who cares what the Kansas Supreme Court says? This is Missouri, all right? Here's the problem. In 1939, there were two hoods from Oklahoma, fellows named Miller and Layton. The case is called United States versus Miller, and if you read this case carefully, write it down, 39, and this is part of your instruction here, S period, CT period. What is the rest of it? Jeez, can't forget. Well, anyway, it's in there. Anyway, if you read the Miller case, U.S. versus Miller, and unfortunately I've got it in the book there so I can refresh my memory, there are three ways of reading Supreme Court citations. 39 is the volume number. S period, CT period means Supreme Court reporter, and the third number is the page number. In other words, if it says 123, that's page 123. It's that simple. And then there will be a number behind that, like 1939. That's the year it was decided. Supreme Court cases are found on the Supreme Court reporters, the United States reports. For example, if it says 423, U period, S period, 123, that's the 423rd volume of the Supreme Court reporter, page 123. And then after that, in parentheses, there will be a number, and that number is the year that the case was decided. The third way that Supreme Court cases are cited is Lawyer's Edition. We're now in the Lawyer's Edition second series. Same basic set of rules. Now, when you go down to the lower courts, you'll find they use the same indexing system. Remember, all this is an indexing system. And we'll get to Missouri here directly, but you've got to learn the federal system, because once you get your total shafting in the Missouri state court system, now it's time to line up for your shafting in the federal system. Okay, so you have to know how this stuff works. The statutes I already described at the federal level, those statutes are simply titles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 I think is agriculture, 18 is crimes and criminal procedure, 21 is food and drugs, 28 judiciary and judicial procedure, I think 31 is, forget what that one is, mining or Indians or something. And once you learn to read this, see, what I've just given you here is a way to read any case citation. This goes all the way down into the state of Missouri, the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. For example, if you see a case, and I'm going to give you one here, let's say it's 833 Fed 2nd 113, that means it's the 833rd volume of the Federal Reporter's second series, page 113. It's an 8th Circuit case, it'll have the date after it. The same is true of the Fed Sup cases. That means that's a district court. Fed 2nd means it's an appellate court, which means they're supposed to follow their own precedent. Those of you who fought your own case, you know better. They do anything they want to do. The Fed Sup case cannot be used as a precedent. It is merely a legal guide. That's from a federal district court, but that's where some federal judges said, well, okay, here's this particular legal principle, and I want to see my name in print. So that's how that works. Okay? Now, in the state, on a state citation, it'll be the exact same thing. It'll be the volume. It'll say Southwest 2nd, S period, W period, 2D, and then the page number. And then, of course, there will be the appellate court it's from and the date and that sort of thing. And again, they're supposed to follow their precedents, but as you may have noticed, especially when you get a not for publication opinion, it means, well, we really should have given it to you, but we're going to shaft you anyway. Now, you think I'm kidding. Actually, you know, it's kind of a pleasure to talk to people who've been in the real world, because a lot of people don't believe this. Is there anybody here who disbelieves what I'm saying? Well, not a single hand. Okay. You've been there, done that, all right? Now, at the federal level, you've got two problems. And I'm sure you're going to be aware of this, and I'm sure some of you have already seen it. The first is, on the criminal side, they have now what is called Rule 11. That's plea bargains. You have the same thing at the state level. If somebody really wants to know what the number is, put it in the box here. I'll look it up in the books that I brought with me. because they have this in every state in the union and with the feds. This is where you get a so-called plea bargain, which directly contradicts both Article 3 of the Federal Constitution and the Sixth Amendment. The trial of all crimes shall is imperative or mandatory, be done by jury. In other words, if every one of you had a jury trial, at least 60 to 80% of you wouldn't be here because they wouldn't have had the time. They couldn't run a conveyor belt like they do with these guilty pleas, where you have lawyers in many cases pressuring you into them. Now, the Rule 11, and like I said, there's a state analog, was actually given to us by the Supreme Court in 1930 in a case called Patton versus United States. Don't have the citation handy, where the Supreme Court says, well, shall actually means, you know, it's if you feel like it. And this is what I was explaining earlier, or trying to explain, I don't even remember if I got to it or not, about judicial construction. Because, again, there are two constitutions. There's one written by the people who wrote it, and there's another one written by the judges who adjudicate it. And back to the Miller case, which I think kind of left you dangling on that one. On the Miller case, if you actually read the case, and the citation is right there in those